And welcome to Impact 2025. I continue a conversation where we talk about all different types of topics, from race, religion, current events, everything that you can think of. And this is your opportunity to participate in that conversation. This is where this is that safe place where we don't really talk as much as we used to about important things and important topics. And this is that opportunity that you can do so. So feel free to enjoy the conversation, but also participate in the conversation by typing your name, not your name, your questions and your comments into the comment section. Uh, and so please feel free to type your comments in there. We will bring them up on the screen. We will address them. And you just don't want to listen to me talk. You definitely want to have your voice heard. As always, before we get started, I'd like to make sure that I talk about the other offerings that are here. Uh, we're Body Christian Ministries at 7 o'clock on Tuesdays and today. We have a time of prayer from 7 to 7:45. Please join us in that. You don't have to pray the whole time, but you pray sometime during that time, and you will be praying with the entire ministry. At 7 o'clock on Thursdays, we have Thursday Thirst. That's our weekly Bible study that is here on Facebook and YouTube. Uh, we also have on Sundays a service at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time here on Facebook, YouTube, and in person. So please feel free to join us for any or all of the offerings that we have. All right. And as always, we just want to jump right into the topics. We have plenty to talk about, as always. But before we get started, I want to just talk one quick second about Malcolm Jamal Warner. For those of you who know, he just recently passed away in a tragic accident where he was on a family vacation and he had a water accident, drowned. But this is an impactful gentleman because he was Theo Huxtable on the famous Cosby Show. And so for a lot of people, especially people of my age group, maybe a little older, we grew up with him. We grew up with him, as Theo Huxtable was a part of the Cosby Show. He then went on to do a lot of other things. He actually became a director. He acted in some other shows. He had his own show that ran for another 4 or 5 seasons. Malcolm and Eddie, just a very instrumental part of a lot of young African American people's lives, and just people's lives just in general. So, I want to pray for him, his family, friends, and everyone. And just remember, life is unexpected. Only 54 years old. It was on a family vacation, so you're not expecting anything bad to happen. So, just remember that life is precious. It comes at you fast, and you better be right. You better be right. You better have everything right. You better have everything right. And so, just wanted to point that out real quick. Then our prayers go up to, especially to his family. Prayers for his family that they have comfort at this moment. But yeah, the odds, Malcolm Jamal. All right, moving on to our topics. More of a current event today, but just a kind of a quick discussion about some things that are going on. There's a lot of distractions. Number one, we continuously have distractions when it comes to this immigration system. There's been reports of people American citizens who are now being captured up by ICE and put into detention centers, and then purposely, where the ICE agents are not allowing attorneys to come in, because if they allow attorneys to come in, then people can contest their detainment, and if they allow attorneys to come in, if they have someone who's an American citizen who got swept up in this, they would immediately have to be released. And so most recently, there was a gentleman who was held for 3 days. There's another one who was held for multiple weeks because they couldn't get an attorney, and these are U.S. citizens. And so, I consider we have a terrorist group now in the United States, another terrorist group in the United States, and it's ICE, it's the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Because what they're doing is they're going into our communities and causing terror. They're a terrorist group. And if you are a member of ICE, you're employed, and you think you go home and you say, man, I do a good job because I'm working for the United States government, you are a terrorist. And I think we all need to understand that and keep that in our minds. But that's not the topic that we're talking about today. Because that one is, unfortunately, a distraction from some of the other things that are going on. And we're going back to our roots, where we were as Impact 2025. Anybody who's been here for a while knows we started talking about our response as a church, our response as a Christian community when it comes to civil rights and social justice. And there has been a video that has been circulating around in Jacksonville, Florida, of a young black man who was sitting in his car, and the police came, broke his window, and punched him in the face, pulled him out of the car, roughed him up, and everything like that. And so I'll go a little bit more in detail. And so in Jacksonville, Florida, there's a video going around because the young gentleman was smart enough to and paranoid enough, unfortunately, to put up his phone so that he could record the interaction that was going on. And so the police pulled him over. They said that he didn't have his lights on, even though it was daytime, but he didn't have his lights on. And because it was inclement weather, he should have had his lights on, so they pulled him over. So he didn't have his seatbelt on. And so when they pulled him over, they asked him to get out of the car and demanded that he get out of the car and do all these sort of things. He had a knife sitting in the passenger seat. He wasn't messing with it or touching it. Watch the video. What happens was one of the police officers, and multiple police officers, and he's discussing with the police officers, why are you pulling me over? And they said, because of your lights. And then he's going back and forth with them and saying, why? It's daytime. There's plenty of other people with no lights on. Why are you pulling me over for not having lights on in the daytime? It makes sense. And so, a reasonable conversation because that made sense. Then one of the police officers decides to break his window and then punched him in the face. And as he puts his hands up, and then they unbuckle his seatbelt, pull him out the car. That same cowardly police officer punches him in the face again for no reason. They wrestle him to the ground and arrest him and all this kind of stuff. And so the only reason we know about this is because he put out his cell phone, he had it on his dash, and he was recording. And now they're investigating the situation. And so this is what was going on. Now I don't know if you caught something I said there. They pulled him over, or the police report said they pulled him over because he didn't have his lights on, and because he didn't have a seatbelt. But if you look at the video, he has a seatbelt on, and they had to reach over to unbuckle his seatbelt so they could pull him off. And again, they pulled him over for not having his lights on in the daytime, which you can see from the video. Now, there's laws here in Virginia. I don't know exactly how it is down in Florida, but they have rainstorms all the time. In Virginia, normally, if you're going to cut your windshield wipers on, you have to cut your lights on. That's the law. That's not a enforceable where we're going to pull you over law or primary offense, but it is a law. You're supposed to have your lights on when you have your windshield wipers on. If you look at the video, there was no inclement weather. There was no rain. There was no storm. Now, that doesn't mean it wasn't anything going on, but from the video, you don't see anything. So why do you have to have your lights on? Which is, again, what the young man was asking. This is important. So Benjamin Crump is the attorney. They're suing. They're putting out information. Now, all of a sudden, Jacksonville's saying, oh, well, now that the video is gone viral, we're investigating now. Where were you before? The state prosecutor came out and said, looks, it appears to him that the police was justified in the punch. Like, it wasn't against the law, they didn't violate law. Not even justified, I'm sorry. They didn't violate state law by punching the police. And so that's where we're at. Black man getting assaulted by the police. A black man being accused of things that he didn't do. Not having a seat on. They wrote a report about the knife, even though it was just sitting on the chair. You're allowed legally to have a knife in the state of Florida on your chair, in your car, on your person. It's not against the law. So they really had nothing. The only thing they tried to really those other charges they dropped. The only one they put on him is that they said that he was not complying, not resisting arrest, but not complying to the orders of the police officer. I guess that's in a timely fashion or whatever, because they were having a conversation. They asked him to get out of the car. Before they were talking about what the charge was or why they pulled him over. He was asking for clarification on that because it didn't make any sense. And one of the police officers got crazy. What were the color of the police officers? These were white guys. So a young black gentleman in the car, young, probably, you can't really tell, young. It looks like he's in his 20s, early 30s at the worst. And police officers, the three that were on the video were one. And so it appears it is a case of racism. Racist behavior, where you're thinking, all right, this is a little young black kid, you better listen to what we're going to say. We're going to pull him over for whatever. We profile him, driving while black. We're going to make up a bunch of stuff. We're going to write false reports. And so what it comes to is, the prosecutor came out, he was great, saying, it's not against the law for a police officer to punch you. Break this one, or do whatever, I guess. That's Florida. They got crazy rules out there. What you didn't hear the police officer say was, I'm putting charges on these police officers for filing a false report. So this, and if anybody wants to comment, I think one of the major problems that we have is we have low expectations of police officers. And our low expectations of police officers is backed up by having low expectations of our prosecutors. It is a crime in every state to file a false police report. It's a misdemeanor or it's a felony. And depending on certain circumstances. But prosecutors generally don't prosecute. And this one in Florida is not talking about prosecuting. And so there's no fear of criminal prosecution if I'm a police officer and I decide I'm going to write a false report. Even further, most of the time, they'll say if they do decide to do something, it'll just be an internal matter, an internal reprimand. So we don't have to take this to the company. Maybe a suspension, maybe you have a stern talking to, something silly like that. So you have the opportunity to go out here and alter people's lives, assault them in whatever manner that you want to. In many places, murder them, because cops do that with regularity. And then I can file a police report to cover that up. According to the law, depending on the severity of what happens, it should be a felony, at the least a misdemeanor. But yet no one is prosecuting these things. And so that's where I think we have some problem that comes in. When we talk about, well, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? Well, what we can do as people is make sure that we demand that the law gets followed. That when these people, because what they normally do is they try to cover their tracks by making up a bunch of lies in their police report. In this particular situation in Jacksonville, fortunately, the guy had it. And if you have watched it, you see how horrible it is. If you haven't watched it, please watch it. You just see how it's juvenile behavior. It's childlike behavior by the police, but it's not behavior that anybody is surprised about, and it's what you expect. And it's always the same thing. You have one police officer who acts extra crazy, and then you have the other police officers who have no duty to protect and serve other citizens. They don't want to protect and serve themselves, and so they don't stop the other police officer from acting crazy. They just, they are accessories to the crime. And so all of them, at the absolute least, should lose their job. But what they do know is that if we file a false police report, we're going to get a free vacation, which is administrative leave, at the worst. We may have to watch a video or something like that. But they're not going to get prosecuted. They're not going to get a misdemeanor. They're definitely not going to get a felony. They're definitely not going to get the civil rights charge they should have for violating your civil rights by going on and arresting you based on false pretense. None of that will happen. And the reason none of that will happen is because of us. Because of you and I, because we haven't been able to control who is our prosecutors. We haven't been able to control who is our who are in charge of our police departments. And the reason we haven't been able to do that is through leadership in our government. We're not voting, or we're not being participants in the process. We only want to vote when it's the presidential election. We don't pay attention to what's going on. We don't even know who our prosecutors are. And then when things happen, we just don't demand the action that needs to happen. I mean, at the simplest, policing would change all across the country if the prosecutors would just follow the law. If the prosecutors are in bed with the police officers, and since they work together, and then the whole crime, we have to fight crime. So you have the police officers and the prosecutors working hand in hand so that they can fight crime. So of course, when the police officers are the crime, they're not going to fight that. They have to take care of each other. And so unfortunately, that's the problem. But the solution is us. We have to make sure, we have to demand accountability. And we have to demand it through the voting box. We have the ballot box, through voting, through action, by putting in the correct people into places. And then calling it out for what it is. We don't let these stories just get buried and die. We have to keep their names on the front of our lips. We have to keep talking about it. As exhausting as it is to continuously talk about police officers, police brutality, things that are going on, we have to keep it top of mind and on top of our lips. Because if you don't, eventually it's going to be you who are sitting there complaining about it because it's happening to you or your family, and everybody else is going to be giving you the same type of laissez-faire attitude that we are giving to others. And so it's on us. It was really on us, all of us, to make sure that we pay attention, to make sure that we keep this stuff at the top of the news. As much as you want to talk about ICE, or you want to talk about the Epstein files, even Malcolm Jamal Warner, who is important to talk about. We have to talk about that, and then we have to make sure that we keep these other stories at the top of the list. We can't let police continue to do the things that they're doing. We allow these things to continue to happen. If we don't talk about it, we don't keep it important. White supremacy is okay. It is reported that Donald Trump, by his biographer, stated that the world would be better if there were no black people. If this is true, what is the value of black life? Yeah, that is a very that's a very interesting statement. It's a very wrong statement from Donald Trump, but you should expect no less. It is not an opinion, but it is a fact that he is a racist individual. You have to remember that his political career started with racism. It started with saying that Barack Obama was not a U.S. citizen purely because of his race. Purely because of his race. There is no way that he could be president of the United States, and he must not have been born here. He can't be. We can't have a black president. That was his whole entire introduction to the political scene. His racism. And then there's even more. We talk about his past, with the fact that he's been sued multiple times for racist activities when it comes to his housing developments, and how he treats people. You can talk about the suits and the accusations when it comes to how he treated his black and brown employees in his casinos. You can talk about Central Park 5. We can go all the way back. And so that is what it is. White supremacy is okay right now because we decided as a country that we voted in white supremacy. We didn't do it once, we did it twice. We doubled down on it. And unfortunately, a larger number of black people than should have voted for that. And a ridiculously large number, they say almost half of the eligible voters who are Hispanic voted for that. And so, yeah, this is what we get. It is okay because we decided it is okay. Right? I didn't decide it was okay. Probably if you're listening, you didn't decide it was okay. But we did as a group. And unfortunately, we get what we get. And, so yeah, it's absolutely okay according to how we act. Unfortunately, this is what we get. So there should be no surprises. We know what we've gotten into. We know what Donald Trump is. And The one thing that we need to do with the police officers is the same thing that we need to do with him. Let's just tell the truth. And keep it at the top of mind and the top of your list. You know, we are in times where we are fighting against a racist government. We are in times where we have a leader that is racist and pushing out racist values. So we need to make sure that we acknowledge that. We need to make sure that we don't allow just ridiculous activities to go on. And every time there's a racist policy that's put out, every time pretty much all of them, every time there is racist words and everything that comes out, we just need to call it out. Can't be afraid to talk about it, and that's everywhere. You may not be able to talk about it at your job, where maybe that's not the place. Some of us, it is the place, but we need to talk about it everywhere that we can, with your family, with your friends. Talk about it with definitely in Black church. We need to talk about it in the church. We need to talk about it everywhere we go, because we got to keep this stuff top of mind. It's unfortunate, and I know people get tired, you get fatigued. You get tired of fighting. But if you don't, you see what happens. You see what the results are. My generation, we were born in the 80s, the early 90s. We were born in the 70s. We dropped the ball. They used to say, all the time, if you don't know your history, you're going to be dealing with it. It's not even that. We knew our history. We were taught well, and we knew what to do. But instead, we just disrespected our history of what we needed to do. And now we're repeating the mistakes. Now we're eroding some of the stuff that we've, the accomplishments that our forefathers, that the previous generations have made, because we knew our history, but we knew better, but we didn't learn from it. You sit back and be like, well, all right, well, we're not gonna send our kids to church. We're gonna ask them whether or not they want to go to church and things like that. We're not gonna go to church as much as we get older. We're not gonna support the organizations that fought for civil rights, and we're not gonna do those things. What's the worst that can happen? And this is what it is. This is what's the worst that can happen. You can have a racist get back into a outright racist. Not a closet racist, not, oh, we think he might be racist, but outright, I'm racist president who clearly will put that out there, doesn't care what anybody thinks, running the country in the White House. And plenty of little racist people with him. That's the worst that can happen. You can sit back and have somebody who has no problems at all on Juneteenth deciding, hey, we got too many holidays. But then just a couple of weeks before, wanted to put in a new holiday. What's the worst that can happen? We can lose all the rights that we have. We can go backwards. And that is what happened. And so, I think as a result, that's my generation's failings. Because one, we didn't go to church. When we became adults, we didn't send our kids to church. And now we got a bunch of people who don't know what to do. And you don't remember that the church, whether it be the Christian church or whether it be the mosque, we talk about the nation, we talk about Islam, regardless, it was the faith community that pushed. It was the faith community that pushed during the civil rights movement. It was the faith community when we go even further back, whether it was black or white, during slavery. And a lot of the organizations and things that were brought along. Because you even look at some of the different organizations that were started by white Christians or white Mormons or white Amish, who decided that they wanted to help out in the civil rights movement. Still the Christian. And so we don't acknowledge how much work or how much that we got through the work of the church. And we don't participate. And then we wonder what's going to happen. You're going to lose your rights. And that's what we're doing right now. We lost our rights because we didn't respect our history. And as a result, we're going to repeat it. And we're repeating that. Kind of went off a little bit. But yeah, to the fact of what we have laws, and it is. I want you to look at the video if you haven't looked at it. um, about police officers in Jacksonville. Uh, it's 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 horrible. It's horrible that you feel that comfortable to be able to do those type of things. You break somebody's window, you punch somebody in the face for no reason. No reason. Wasn't resisting arrest. At no point in time did he resist arrest. Even when he got out the car, we pulled him out of the car, decided let's punch him again and then wrestle him to the ground. It's just it's horribly bad. It's bad, baby. It's juvenile. Baby. It's something I would expect from kids, not from people who are gone. But they have no fear. There is no one when they think in their mind. There's no one that's really going to hold them accountable. Worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to be put on administrative leave. The city, maybe they might get sued. They'll have to settle a lawsuit. You know, unfortunately for the young man, maybe he will be $1 million or a couple $1 million richer in the next couple of years. But that's it. We can go out here, we can do whatever. Money means nothing when you're talking about millions of dollars here, trillions of dollars here, deficits, blah 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 blah. Money means nothing. So let's go out here and let's do whatever we want to do to black and brown. Notice, if you will, that many of the black leadership in the government have been fired. Programs, particularly in relationship to education, are being eliminated. There is a concerted effort to dismantle the Department of Education, which supports many of the HBCUs. Absolutely, absolutely. It is at a dizzying rate to try to pay attention to all of the different advances that black people make that are being taken away. That's been stripped. It is at a dizzying pace to recognize all the people who had power and who were in charge, who were being fired and being moved out of positions. It is almost impossible to keep track of all of the social safety nets, or all of the things that were put in place to make some of to right some of the wrongs, or to not even right some of the wrongs, to ameliorate some of the situations that were caused through racism, through Jim Crow. We push forward with civil rights. All of these things that are being pulled away, you just can't keep track. Because again, white supremacy, racism is right now. It's they got it in the leadership of this country. That's where they have it. And so unfortunately, we have to do what we can do as far as keep people accountable with the laws we have, as long as they are still here, because they're going to get stripped away. But also just remember that we have to keep the topic. Okay, you got to make as sick as you feel about talking about this all the time. You got to make them feel sick. You got to make them. We need to make people feel like I don't even want black people around no more because they always want to talk about their rights. We're talking about how they're being disenfranchised. We talk about how they're being abused by the police. We talk about it all. You shouldn't want me around because I talk about it all the time. That's what all of us need to do. We need to remind them of how bad they are making. Just like Israel is trying to control parts of the Middle East, whites are trying to take more control of the U.S. Absolutely. There's particular white people who want to just take over the whole time. And the rest of us, white people, black people, brown people, who don't agree, don't have the power to stop it at this moment in time. Unless we take that power, do some aggressive actions. So what are those aggressive actions? One, of course, you got to go the legal route. Then you got to hold people accountable. The reality of the matter is, when it comes to voting and participating, the numbers are so small and so minuscule. You talk about the primary votes. In most places, only 10% of the population, if that, vote in the primary election. And so you're talking about we're picking who's going to be running for office with only 10% of the population. And when I say 10% of the population that goes to primaries, that's not like low or the average. That's the high watermark. 10% of the population goes to primaries. So you really have like 5% of the population picking who's going to be running in our country, who's going to be running just different local offices and things like that. Primaries, the party system, we have so many people. It's such a small number of people who pick everything. And we don't understand because we don't participate, we don't pay attention. It's that's what we are. That's what we are. And so, um, yeah. So we're at our time. It was great comments. But just as a reminder, if there's anything that was said today, I think that is a reminder that we have to keep talking about this. We have to keep it to the topic. We can't be distracted by other crazy. As much as we want to talk about terrorists, that's cool. We need to be talking about the police side. As much as we want to talk about, ICE, we need to be talking about the police side. As much as you want to talk about the economy and the stock market and whatever other silly thing that we have out here, we got to be talking about what's going on with our people. We got to keep the important things on our agenda. The important things top of the top of this. All right, well, that's it. We're past our time. As a reminder, I want to remind people that on Thursdays, we have Thursday. I would say please join us for that. That's at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, Facebook and YouTube. On Sundays at 10 o'clock, we have worship service. That's Eastern Standard Time as well. Facebook, YouTube, and in person. And on Tuesdays at 7 at 7:45, that's our time of prayer. And of course, at 8 on Tuesdays, where you are right now, Impact 2025. I want to thank everybody for joining us. And thank you for all the comments that came in. Have a good one and good night. And then, of course, join us for the next one.